Oh, wow. Man, I'm sorry. So sorry. Um, yeah. Uh, Basically, I ran to use the bathroom and then I got into a conversation about storage units and um, lost track of time. Did not set the timer like I normally do to tell me, like, hey, you need to run back. So I apologize for that. I was shaking hands with danger. Um, Anyways, I'm Skip Elsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show. And when we're paying attention, we actually show you old 16 millimeter films that we've been scanning or we have in our collection. And that was silent footage of plant nutrients, coronet film. We have another coronet film here. Holidays your neighbors celebrate. Which ones did they miss? Let's find out. Hey, and I'm using a new microphone. How is it? Is it good? Let me know. Enjoy.
The 4th of July is a holiday we all celebrate in America. When? On July 4th, of course. During the 12 months of the year, there are many holidays that we all celebrate. But because there are many different kinds of people in our country, sometimes your neighbors may celebrate holidays that are different from the ones you celebrate. The year begins with a holiday. January 1st is New Year's Day. But some Americans also have New Year celebrations at another time. Americans whose families came from China celebrate the New Year later, sometime in January or February. There's always a dragon or lion in a Chinese New Year's parade. Firecrackers are part of the celebration, too. The Chinese invented them long before the United States became a country. The Chinese New Year is celebrated at about the same time as the New Year most of us celebrate. But many Americans who are Jewish also celebrate a New Year holiday around September, the Jewish New Year. In temples and synagogues, the holiday begins with the blowing of a ram's horn. The holiday lasts 10 days. At the beginning and at the end of the holiday, Jewish children go to their temples or synagogues with their parents. There they celebrate the coming of the Jewish New Year. They think about what they did during the past year and what they'd like to do better the next year. So we celebrate the New Year in different ways in America. Some holidays that we celebrate honor special people. In February, you know whose birthday we celebrate. Washington's birthday. In March, many Americans also honor someone who wasn't American. This is a St. Patrick's Day parade. St. Patrick is Ireland's beloved saint, and St. Patrick's Day is Ireland's greatest holiday. People whose families came from Ireland were the first ones to celebrate this holiday in America. Today, St. Patrick's Day is celebrated by Americans whose families came from all parts of the world. People wear green on St. Patrick's Day. Green in Ireland's flag stands for the southern part of Ireland. The little shamrock with 3 leaves is Ireland's emblem. St. Patrick used it to teach about the 3 parts of the Trinity. People in different parts of our country honor other important men during the year. People honor Abraham Lincoln, and Robert E. Lee, and Martin Luther King. So there are holidays that honor important people during the year. Some holidays come near the beginning of certain seasons. One holiday comes on a Sunday soon after the first day of spring. Easter is celebrated by Christians everywhere. Christians whose families came from Greece may celebrate Easter 1 or a few weeks later than other Christians. A special part of the Greek Church's Easter celebration takes place at night. Candles are lit inside the church, then carried outside and around the church in a special ceremony. Another season of the year when there are holidays is winter. In December, one of the favorite holidays of children is celebrated. It's Christmas, of course. Some Americans have special ways of celebrating Christmas. For some Americans whose families came from Mexico or other Latin American countries, a part of Christmas fun is the piñata. A piñata can have any shape. This one looks like a little donkey. A piñata is made of paper mache and filled with candies and cookies and presents for the children. The children take turns being blindfolded and try to break the piñata with a stick. And when the piñata gets hit and breaks, then the fun really starts. About a week after Christmas, Americans from Puerto Rico celebrate Three Kings Day. This is a celebration of the day the 3 wise men brought presents to the infant Jesus. The children fill a box with straw and put it beside their bed. The straw is for the camels the 3 kings rode on. And the next morning, the straw is gone, and there are presents for the children. But not everyone in America celebrates Christmas. At the same time of the year when Christmas is celebrated, Jewish children are celebrating Hanukkah. On each one of the 8 days of Hanukkah, the children get a gift. They also light candles at sundown each day of the holiday. Hanukkah celebrates a time very long ago when Jews won back the freedom to worship in their own way. We celebrate many holidays in many different ways in America. That's because Americans have come from all parts of the world and brought their holidays with them. So sometimes your neighbors celebrate holidays that are different from yours. When you understand these holidays, it helps you know more about your neighbors and how they live.
Okay, does it sound like I'm in a well right now? Let me shut the door. Hold on. What do you think? Is it better? Let me know in the comments. It's better. You sound distant. I'm right here, but it could be I turn up the microphone some. It's aight. Okay. It's it's new microphone, trying some stuff. So we'll see. All right. Turn up the reverb, yeah. Turn on the phaser. All right, so behind me I have a film scanner, and we are going to watch a film called, what is it? Jose and His Family. Yeah, enjoy.
Finally, I'm going to meet my mother's Spanish family. Until now, it was just letters and photographs. The invitation Uncle Arturo and Cousin Maria sent me made me feel part of the family already. I'll stay in the city just 1 week, then visit my grandfather in a small village in Galicia on the western edge of Spain. Years ago, my grandfather left Spain and came to Mexico in search of work. That's how his older daughter, my mother, married a Mexican. His other daughter, Carmen, returned to Spain and married Uncle Arturo. I can't wait to meet her and my younger cousin Gemma and Juanito. In the last picture I saw, they were still small children.
Pues no sé si habrán salido del colegio.
Antes están enormes, ¿no?
Sí, están...
Están hechos unos personajes. Y esta también.
¿Qué no es eso, padre? Sí que lo que pasa es que están muy revoltosos, pero lo normal a esa edad, como todos los niños. Gemma tiene 14 ya.
What a surprise to hear that Gemma is already 14 and Juanito 12.
Madre mía. ¿En qué año van ya?
¿En el colegio?
Sí, sí.
Gemma está
Maria tells me that they are both in elementary school, here called Educación General Básica. It has 8 grades. It's different in Mexico. We call it primary school, and it has 6 grades. She tells me that Gemma is in the 8th grade and hopes to pass 2 difficult exams which will allow her to go to the university. A paella! What a welcome Aunt Carmen has prepared for me. The most Spanish dish. My mother often talks about it, and now I'm going to taste it.
Sí, siempre pasa lo mismo. Cuando te quieres esmerar, pues siempre sale peor.
Pero no le hagas caso, te está bromeando, hombre.
And Carmen wonders if my mother still makes a paella in Mexico. Sorry, but she doesn't. It's too expensive, especially camarones. These are not camarones, Uncle Arturo says. They're cigalas. In Castilian Spanish, large shrimps are called cigalas.
¿Y tu madre no querrá gastarse en un duro? ¿Siempre ha sido una roñosa?
Más que mi madre, mi padre.
So many new words. If it weren't for all these new words, I know exactly what they're saying.
No, ya está bien, gracias.
Gemma wants to know if there is a dish similar to paella in Mexico. Not really, but we do have a rice dish, reddish in color from tomatoes.
Tú, María, poquito, como siempre, ¿no?
Poquito no, normal.
Lleva tomates.
It contains chícharos. Oops, they don't know this Mexican word for garbanzo beans.
Unas bolitas.
They call it guisantes in Castilian Spanish. I also tried to describe mole, which we serve as a sauce. It is a mixture of 7 different kinds of chili peppers, chocolate, ajonjolí, another word they don't know,
Aparte de eso te sirven mole, que es una mezcla de
I never really thought much about the small differences between Castilian or Mexican Spanish. We understand each other most of the time.
ajonjolí. Es una semillita chiquita.
Es una especie, como una especie, como los
sí.
cominos o como
Una cosa así.
parecido.
¿Picante?
No, no, grasosito, rico.
¿Más, Juan?
La cigala.
Ah. Se me olvidaba el mejor.
¿Y esto cómo se llama en México, primo?
Esas jaibas.
As we talk about different foods, I find that I call river crabs jaibas. They call them congrejos.
El pescado, lo revuelvo con otro pescado, lo empanizan, y lo fríen.
Lo empanan.
Lo empanan.
Nosotros después se empanizan.
Empanizan.
I love the way it sounds when they talk to each other. The whole family seems so close.
Está buena, está buena.
Excelente. ¿Qué es esto?
Calamar.
The campus of the new University of Madrid is spread out on the edge of the city. This morning, Maria invited me to come and meet some of her friends. I do want to see the college. Maybe I'll come back to Madrid to study, to learn more Castellan Spanish, to discover more about my own roots.
Hugo, Eva, Ana y Cristina. Ese es mi primo José, que acaba de venir de México. Y nada, me ha pasado muy bien, ¿no?
Oye, os voy
Hola.
a contar el último que me he aprendido, que es demasiado, aunque
A ver.
no os asustéis vosotras, ¿no?
El único que cuenta chistes soy yo.
Por favor, no digas esas cosas. Bueno, vámonos entonces, ¿no?
One of Maria's friends tells a joke, the latest.
No, pero si quieres le cabré un pollo.
I don't get this joke at all. I guess it's another difference in our language. And maybe the difference is in the way Spaniards and Mexicans look at things.
Va con una floresota grandota, no va caminando. Da la vuelta a la esquina y llega a la...
I hope Hugo and Daniel will become my friends also. Maria tells me that she and her friends feel they belong to a new Spanish generation, which is free from old prejudices. They seem relaxed and friendly to me. So they asked me and Maria to come with them to their favorite cafe. Here, there is more joking and kidding around.
Vaya chiste más macabro. Me voy a por algo. ¿Queréis algo? No, gracias. Oye, prima, si te digo una cosa, no.
I find that Maria is much more attractive in person than in any of her photographs. In Mexico, we call her güerita. She doesn't understand the meaning of güerita. I explain that in Mexico, we call a light-haired, light-eyed, rosy-cheeked girl like her a güerita.
No, si es en serio lo que te digo. Yo te vi en las últimas fotografías que mandaron y eres mucho mejor en persona.
Maria is flattered, but says that we Mexicans are inclined to be machistas. In her opinion, we tend to treat women as nice things to have around, a kind of a decoration, preferably attractive, but that's all. I disagree. I think that all men, Mexican or Spanish, admire a beautiful woman. Maria insists that her generation of Spanish women want to be more than just those pretty creatures. They want to be appreciated for more than just looks.
Una chica bonita, ¿no?
Pero somos algo más que cosas bonitas, ¿no?
Sí, pero nadie está diciendo que no.
Daniel feels that she has a point and proposes a truce.
Bueno, perdón.
One morning, I find Maria calling grandfather. You should hear her trying to sell him on the idea of a visit to Madrid with me when I return from Galicia. It's been a long time since his last visit.
Claro, hombre.
Pero hija, si yo estoy hecho polvo del lumbago.
Anímate y vente y déjate de lumbagos y de problemas.
Que estoy hecho polvo. Ya verás cuando llegue esa mierda, ya verás.
Maria reminds him that he always wanted to see the Roman aqueduct in Segovia, which I too have not seen. Perhaps we can go together. Besides, Madrid has changed a lot since his last visit, she tells him. There are more beautiful parks to rest in and enjoy a cup of coffee with the family, especially on the Castellano Boulevard, which he used to enjoy so much. And then there is his favorite Plaza Mayor. He will be surprised to see how it has been restored, but it still retains its old charm. It is full of cafes with painters and visitors from all over the world.
Bueno, adiós, abuelo, un beso. Adiós.
Adiós. Adiós.
She will not take no for an answer. Today, I'm on my way to visit grandfather. He is a very special person because in Spain, people still honor the patriarch, the oldest member of the family. And Carmen reminds me not to forget Maria's invitation to grandfather to visit Madrid. She is sure that it will do him good. I gladly promise to do my best. And then I suggest that they start thinking of a trip to Mexico. And Carmen assures me that they will discuss it seriously. Gombarros, a Galician village on the Atlantic coast where grandfather lives. He says, I am old, my boy, truly old, and I love this land. I understand him. Grandfather still has fond memories of Mexico, but this is where he belongs. And it is here where I finally begin to understand the background of my mother's family, whose roots go deep into the past. I begin to appreciate these hard-working people, especially the women, who are often left alone when their husbands must leave to find work far away from home. "You are right," says Grandfather. "These women work very hard here. They may not have much of an education, but they know how to survive." I am amazed to learn that this woman is 82 years old, but still gets up every morning with the sun and works in the fields growing corn, potatoes, onions, and garlic. Spanish grandfather, Mexican grandson. It's good to get to know each other. My grandfather points out to me what binds us, besides blood, is a common language and the cultural characteristics that are shared by all Spanish-speaking people in general. My dear family, it has been wonderful to meet my Spanish relatives. Maria has introduced me to her school friends. I think they accept me. On Mother's Day, I went with her to buy a present for Aunt Carmen. Hugo and Daniel tagged along, and they too bought presents for their mothers. One weekend, Maria drove me to Avila. I will have to tell you a lot about this ancient city. Maria was very disappointed because of the weather. Spain is supposed to be the land of sunshine, but the rain didn't matter. I was still having a good time.
La vida aquí resulta alegre. Tal vez sea por el clima o la gente, no lo sé. Muchos días acompañaba a María.
I went to the market with Maria.
Me encantaba ir con ella, sobre todo a una pescadería estupenda. También tenían frutería.
You should see the fruits and vegetables,
Pero a mí lo que más me gustaba
and the fish stands with many different kinds of fish and seafood.
Encontramos toda clase de pescados frescos.
Another day in Madrid, we went to pick up the two younger cousins. Aunt Carmen worries about them walking home alone because they have to cross a busy and wide street.
Hay una avenida muy grande en la que hay bastante tráfico. La otra tarde,
Later, we went to the amusement park and had lots of fun. It reminds me of our Chapultepec. It gave me the one opportunity to treat all the cousins. They never allow me to spend even a peseta. I will miss my Spanish relatives. Mother, now maybe I can say that your native country is also mine. Grandfather has introduced me to a Bolivian family who moved to Galicia 6 years ago. He is a doctor. Strangely enough, they don't want to return to Bolivia. They love it in Spain.
Te bajará una estrella, vida mía, te vislumbraba. Mejor no te bajo el sol, ni la luna ni la estrella no seas tan interesada.
By now, Grandfather feels that I have begun to know a little bit about your country and a small part of Spain. He has given me a deeper understanding of this land that once sent out adventurous men to discover a new world and bring with them their values, their culture, their language, and their religion. I'll come home hoping to return to Spain sometime. I never really felt like a stranger here. Even though the ocean separates our two countries, the language, the customs, and the spirit of the people seem to bind us together.
So that's interesting. Milan Herzog was an educational filmmaker and did most of his work for Encyclopedia Britannica. So it's interesting that that was actually distributed by Barr. Let's see what we got. Let's learn how maps add meaning to history. Enjoy.
With the finest ships and seamen of the time, the nation of Phoenicia became a great sea trading power. Phoenicians carried articles produced by the Egyptians and the Babylonians. Facts. Facts from history books about the ancient nation of Phoenicia. We can pull these facts together, give them more meaning, by looking at a map showing where Phoenicia was. A historical map shows us Phoenicia at the eastern end of the Mediterranean Sea. Its location, bordering the sea, helps us understand why the Phoenicians were active in sea trade. If we look inland once again, we see that Phoenicia was located between Egypt and Babylonia. It's not surprising that goods from both of these countries were sent to this seafaring nation to be traded by the Phoenicians. The ancient Romans made their impact in other ways. History books tell us of the power of Roman armies, the quality of Roman roads, the magnificence of Roman architecture, and the fairness of Roman laws. This gives us an idea of Roman accomplishments. But how much more complete our picture becomes with a map showing the boundaries of the Roman Empire. It's helpful to compare a historical map with a present-day map of the same area. These maps are drawn to different scales. The present-day map of the Mediterranean area is larger than the historical map of the same area. But in your mind, you can think of this map as being larger and this one as being somewhat smaller, to make a comparison. The Roman Empire included an area now occupied by dozens of nations of Europe, Africa, and Asia. Political maps add meaning to the places we read about in history, but we also study particular events. The voyages of Columbus, for instance. History books tell us that Columbus discovered the New World. But what part of the New World? Let's look at a map showing Columbus's explorations. A key on the map shows 4 lines which stand for his 4 voyages. On his first voyage, all Columbus found were a couple of large islands. His second voyage took him to other parts of these islands. It wasn't until his third voyage that he touched a continent, South America. On his fourth voyage, he found part of Central America. He never did see North America. We get a clear picture of Columbus's discoveries from the map. Here's a map of North America drawn 150 years after Columbus. Notice the blank space? People didn't know if this area was land or water. From what had been explored of the New World at the time, it was hard to know. Notice also that these waterways are open. Did they end a little farther inland, or did they continue through to the Pacific Ocean, to India? This map helps us understand why many voyages of exploration were launched during the 16th and 17th centuries. Why men such as John Cabot,
Jacques Cartier and Henry Hudson sailed their ships into waterways opening into the Atlantic. They were looking for a shortcut to Asia. Here's a map of North and South America, showing the route ships followed in 1900 between New York and San Francisco, all the way around the tip of South America. Can you see how this might add meaning to an event such as the construction of the Panama Canal? The map shows how much shorter the route is for ships passing through the canal across the Isthmus of Panama. Sometimes history becomes more meaningful with the help of physical maps. Seeing the mountain ranges in eastern North America, for instance, helps us understand an event in the life of Daniel Boone. This painting portrays the time he led the settlers through the Cumberland Gap into Kentucky, considered an important event. But why? The Appalachian Mountains form a barrier between the Atlantic coast and the Central Plains. It was difficult for settlers to find their way through. Daniel Boone showed the newcomers a trail that led through the Cumberland Gap, opening the way for settlement of the Central Plains of North America. Events in African history can also be made more meaningful with the help of maps. But rather than using physical maps, we will look at some political maps of Africa. These show the results of events taking place over a period of about 100 years. In 1880, we see that small parts of the continent were controlled by foreign peoples. The key shows who the rulers were: Turkish, Portuguese, British, and French. Each symbol corresponds to a different part of the map. By 1891, there were more rulers, and more of the continent was under foreign control. By 1914, almost all of Africa was ruled by foreign countries. By 1957, however, the pattern had begun to change. Independent countries were forming. This change was very rapid. 6 years later, in 1963, most of Africa was made up of independent states. Significant political changes clarified by maps. Another kind of map that can help us learn about changes is one showing population. This one shows the population density in the United States in 1840. The legend tells us that the denser the pattern on the map, the greater the number of people in an area. In 1840, most of the people of the United States were in the east. The west was pretty much unsettled. There were less than 2 people per square mile of land in 1840. But by 1850, just 10 years later, in the area of California, there was a high concentration of people. Seeing this rapid change in population helps us understand the importance of an event that took place in 1848. Gold being discovered in California. The discovery of gold was important, not only for the money involved, but for the population increase it helped create in the far west. Sometimes it's helpful to examine population changes over a longer period. Notice that in 1870, most of the people in the United States lived in the eastern half of the country. The people were spread out fairly evenly over this area. But looking at later maps, 20 years apart, we see how the population began to grow and cluster. More and more people began living closer and closer together. We get a picture of growth. From a country of farmers living apart from one another to a country of city dwellers living close together. Changes in history are made more meaningful with the help of maps. Maps help us understand particular events. They help us understand how physical features of the Earth influence events. Physical maps, population maps, political maps. These are just a few of the many kinds of maps we use to add meaning to history.
Thank you, Coronet, for that. A bunch of panning across illustrations and maps, and occasionally an arrow. Let's see. What do we got? Apollo 4 mission. I haven't shown a NASA film in quite a while, so we're back. Enjoy.
The Apollo 4 mission, unmanned first flight for Apollo Saturn V, space vehicle for the manned lunar mission, launched into Earth orbit on November 9, 1967. The Apollo Saturn V stands as high as a 36-story building and weighs more than a U.S. Navy destroyer. Its Earth orbital payload is 10 tons greater than John Glenn's entire Mercury Atlas space vehicle of 1962. It is moved from the most voluminous building in the world, the most massive mobile equipment ever built. It is watched over in the greatest detail by one of the complex arrays of facilities ever constructed. It answers to a world-encircling chain of electronic eyes and ears and flies a course dictated by the greatest computer capability known. Altogether, the space vehicle, the facilities, the technological team, in short, our manned lunar mission capability, constitutes the creation of some 400,000 Americans. We had chosen to launch the entire space vehicle in the first mission, rather than follow the step-by-step approach of earlier programs. Looking at an illustration of our Earth as it would be viewed from high above the North Pole, we may see the planned course of Apollo 4. 2 circular orbits and 1 elliptical orbit. In addition to the liftoff from the Kennedy Space Center, the first, second, and third stage burns and insertion into circular orbit. High points of the mission were to include the reignition of the Saturn V S4B third stage over the western Atlantic, the first spacecraft propulsion system burn over the eastern Atlantic, the more than 11,000-mile peak altitude of the elliptical orbit to be reached over the Indian Ocean, the second and longest spacecraft propulsion system burn over the western Pacific, then the re-entry, and finally the landing in the Pacific, a few hundred miles northwest of Hawaii. During the 25,000-mile-per-hour entry into the Earth's atmosphere, the spacecraft will, as in the lunar mission, be guided along a roller coaster-like flight path, heating as it encounters the atmosphere, cooling as it climbs back toward space, reheating as it again plunges into the atmosphere for the final descent. Countdown for launch was initiated at the Kennedy Space Center at 6 a.m., November 7, 1967, with liftoff scheduled to occur precisely 49 hours later. Almost inexorably, launch operations moved forward. Minor problems were encountered but readily solved. Although Apollo 4 was tested more persistently than any previous American space vehicle, there were no indications of system malfunctions. The delays, so familiar to us in the early missions of previous programs, simply did not occur. Almost exactly at the planned instant, the Saturn V ignited. Apollo 4 lifted off at 1 second after 7 o'clock, November 9, 1967, with its first stage delivering 7.5 million pounds of thrust. Two minutes and 32 seconds later, just as scheduled, the first stage burned out and separated, having consumed 4.5 million pounds of fuel. The separation and second stage ignition were also recorded by cameras carried on board the vehicle, at this point some 40 miles above the Earth. Additionally, the camera gave engineers a close-up look at another event, the separation of the interstage structure. This was of critical importance because clearances were extremely small between the structure and the engines. For more than 6 minutes, the second stage, which had been a source of major development problems, performed perfectly, hurtling Apollo 4 to an altitude of more than 100 miles. Like the first stage, the second stage cut off and separated almost exactly on schedule. The third stage ignited and inserted Apollo 4 into a circular orbit, where it would remain for some 3 hours. In slightly more than 11 minutes, Apollo 4 had proven out Saturn V stages that had required years to develop. But the mission was far from over. For now, the orbiting Apollo 4 had to be checked out remotely in anticipation of the next series of events. And ground support facilities had to be evaluated. In addition, flight controllers had to prepare the third stage for its first reignition in space, a capability which must be proven for the Apollo lunar mission. Near the end of this time, one of the few irregularities of the entire flight occurred when data suggested that a valve on the Saturn V third stage had not closed as planned for reignition. But at this point, technical skill paid off. The flight controllers quickly revised the pre-ignition sequence to compensate for the potential problem. the third stage was fired as scheduled, propelling Apollo 4 into the elliptical orbit. 5 minutes and 25 seconds later, the stage shut down. Saturn V, whose guidance computer had made over 300 million calculations since liftoff, had placed the spacecraft on course. The third stage and a test model of the spacecraft lunar module fell away. The launch vehicle had done its job. A few moments later, the spacecraft's own propulsion system ignited and burned for 16 seconds. Giving the spacecraft the velocity necessary to reach its peak altitude of more than 11,000 miles. The spacecraft was oriented so its heat shield was shaded from the sun, soaking in a temperature 150 to 200 degrees below zero. The contrast between this temperature and the extremely high temperatures of re-entry would put the spacecraft heat shield to an especially severe test. As Apollo 4 climbed toward its peak altitude, a camera pointed out a spacecraft window gave us a preview of what a future Apollo command pilot will see of our planet. These photographs were selected from a series shot every 11.4 seconds during a 2-hour and 12-minute period as the Earth passed in front of the spacecraft window. Apollo 4 reached its greatest altitude, 11,232 miles above the Indian Ocean, at 5 hours, 46 minutes, 48 seconds after liftoff. And began its descent to Earth, responding to the pull of gravity, increasing in velocity as if it were speeding down a long hill. Some 2 hours and 20 minutes later, the spacecraft propulsion system again ignited, burning this time for 4.5 minutes. This burn accelerated the spacecraft toward a re-entry into the atmosphere at 25,000 miles per hour, the speed anticipated for the Apollo lunar mission re-entry. The spacecraft command module, which would contain the flight crew in a manned mission, was separated, then oriented with its heat shield forward. At some 8 hours and 20 minutes after liftoff, Apollo 4 re-entered the Earth's atmosphere. Temperatures on the heat shield, which was less than 3 inches thick, soon reached 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This was 1,000 degrees hotter than the launch pad flame bucket when Apollo 4 lifted off. Yet the temperature inside the command module never exceeded 70 degrees. Could we have seen the actual command module following its roller coaster path toward Earth, it would have resembled a meteorite from space. The command module splashed into the Pacific Ocean within sight of its recovery ship, the USS Bennington. Although charred, the 5.5-ton command module, like the entire 3,000-ton Apollo Saturn V, had passed the test. Further, the world-encircling chain of ground facilities and the launch and flight teams had proven equal to the task. Some 8.5 hours after Apollo 4 roared off the launch pad at the Kennedy Space Center, the mission drew to a close. And the nation could take new pride in her technology and a new confidence in her future. That was the triumph of Apollo 4.
I love me some NASA footage. I like there's, highlights. So each mission had a series of highlights that they released to the press and to the public so that you could say that we're getting the word out about what we spent your tax dollars on. And beautiful thing of animation. There's a lot of pre-Apollo footage where it's all this interesting kind of 60s animation. And great soundtracks, but this was a nice mix. What is also interesting is I digitized a bunch of stuff, a bunch of space shuttle missions, and they have the recap that they do, like a press conference recap, where they show footage. Then each mission had an educational component, so they would shoot stuff and they would do experiments. And then they would put together these packaged, like a series about space science and about science in general, biology, astronomy, physics, a variety of different things. And then that would be released and shown on the national channel and also be released to schools and things like that. So your tax dollars at work. Thanks for tuning in today. Sorry, old radios, about your shipment being destroyed. It's very frustrating. I've been there, man. You do this long enough, shippers do horrible things. And also people who pack up things for shipping do horrible things. Packing peanuts are our scourge. We hate packing peanuts. Do not use packing peanuts. If you do, put them in a plastic like grocery bag and seal it so they don't get all in everything and then pour out. That's the way that we repurpose. We don't throw them out, but we repurpose them by putting them in an enclosed thing so they don't go everywhere. If you like what you saw, hit the thumbs up, hit the like button. Those are great ways to support us. I'm weighing the possibility of getting a 5th storage unit. We're beginning to kind of think about like maybe some renovation work here and what that's going to look like. I'll keep you posted because there will be opportunities to give us more money to buy shelving or do other things, and we might have to relocate at some point, depending on how things go. But thanks so much. Hit the thumbs up, hit the like. If you like what you saw, you can certainly donate via the ko-fi.com/avgeeks or patreon.com/avgeeks. We're also adding a bunch of videos to YouTube so that we can bolster our numbers, because YouTube's like, you're not adding as many videos as you used to, so add more. So we got a bunch we're adding. But thanks, and we will see you, what is it? Tomorrow's Thursday? Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.